Okay. Namo Sakya Muni Buddha. Namo Sakya Muni Buddha. Namo Sakya Muni Buddha. Thank you for coming out, everyone, today. I hope you've been enjoying the fall weather that we've been having. Today we'll be going over again the Dhammapada. We'll go over verse 78 today, and in Quang Tree's absence, I'll be giving that talk. So when he comes back, I think we'll start to switch off between who gives the talk. So then today we'll go over the verse 78. This is a pretty straightforward verse. But as always, I'll tell you the verse, I'll tell you the story along with the verse, and then my own commentary that goes along with that. So the first goes, associate not with evil friends, associate not with mean men, associate with good friends, associate with noble men. And then I'll repeat that. Associate not with evil friends, associate not with mean men, associate with good friends, associate with noble men. So then I'll go into where this verse came from and why it was said. So the story follows a monk named Channa, who, while he was staying at the monastery with the Buddha, at the Dhammapada monastery, he was quite ignorant and he berated and abused a lot of the monks that were staying there. But then before we go about that story, I'll give you a little background about who Channa was. So then we do have some new people here, so this will be new to you, but I think a lot of us know this, the backstory of the Buddha. So before he was the Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha was a prince. He was known as Prince Siddhartha Gautama. And at this time, he was only a bodhisattva in this point in his life, where a bodhisattva is a person aspiring to be an enlightened being. They're there to help people where they can, to help everyone achieve an enlightened state. And while he was prince there, he had Channa. Channa was the lead charioteer of the palace. He was also the lead servant to Prince Siddhartha. So you could say that Channa was there from the very beginning. He had seen the prince be born. He was there throughout his whole childhood, and he saw the prince really grow up. But then Channa's big influence was when the prince had left the palace one day. And he was going to associate with some other royal peers. He needed to leave the palace for this meeting. And then upon leaving the palace, he had witnessed what are called the four sights. And this was explained to him by Channa. These four sights were, 1, he saw an old man. 2, he saw a sickly man. 3, he saw a corpse on the street. And then 4, he finally saw an ascetic. And then Channa had told him that this ascetic had decided to leave the home life for the spiritual life. He was looking for a way out of the cycle of birth and death. And then upon seeing these four sights, the prince was really shook into his core. He had seen that outside of his life of comfort and security in the palace, there was this world of suffering outside. And it was seeing that suffering that really had a drastic impact on him, to where eventually he made the choice to renounce the royal life. He chose to renounce the life of safety and comfort to go forth into the spiritual life. Because what concerned the Prince Siddhartha was the way out of suffering, to end the cycle of birth and death, this constant cyclatory cycle of dying and becoming and being birthed into these situations over and over again. And so this need to end the cycle, he eventually left the palace. And after much convincing, he convinced Channa to chariot him out of the palace at night while everyone else was asleep. And as the two had exited, the prince finally got off his horse and he handed over all his possessions to Channa. And Channa was very intent on staying with the prince. He had been with him throughout his whole life. He had provided him with security and a lot of safety. But the prince had saw that this was a journey he needed to take himself. This was more of an internal one, and he did not see the need for a person to stay with him. And finally, with that, the prince had taken his sword for the last time and cut off his hair, and he gave that to Channa. To where, if you go around the temple, you could actually see the site in the front of the temple. You'll see the prince cutting off his hair, and Channa and the horse next to him. It's outside if you want to take a look at that. So then finally, the prince had given Channa all his possessions and all his hair, and Channa returned back to the palace. And he stayed there for 6 years until finally, when the prince became an enlightened being, when he finally achieved Buddhahood, he came back to the palace. And upon seeing the Buddha, Channa was filled with this spiritual urgency. He said, "This is the way that I want to continue my life. I don't want to engage with the royal affairs anymore. I'd rather go into the spiritual life and seek what the Buddha was seeking." And if you kept up with some of the sutra study talks that we've had, there was more than just Channa that left for the spiritual life as the Buddha came back to the palace. So Channa was one of them. Another person to leave the palace life was Devadatta, who was the Buddha's cousin. Another person was Ananda, who was the Buddha's half-brother. And then it was also Rahula, which was the Buddha's son, who had left the palace. So as soon as the Buddha came back to the palace after his enlightenment, a lot of people went back with him into the spiritual life. So this is sort of the background of Channa, and we can begin with the story. So as Channa became ordained, he had used a lot of his previous titles from his royal life to assert his own authority over a lot of the monks. To where, because he hadn't developed a lot of spiritual qualities, because he hadn't been too far along his own path, he needed to prove his own worth against the other monks. But since he wasn't versed in meditation, he wasn't great along his practice, he could really only use his previous royal titles to prove his authority. So he would go over to other monks and say, "Oh, I knew Siddhartha. I knew the prince as soon as he was born. I was with him his whole life. I know him better than all of you. I was there from the very beginning." And he would go and abuse a bunch of these monks, and in particular, he would try to assert his dominance over the main two chief disciples, Shariputra and Mahamagdalena. And simply because he knew the Buddha longer, to where Shariputra and Mahamagdalena, they had known the Buddha only for a short time. So then word had got around to the Buddha of Channa's arrogant behavior and how he was berating all these monks, to where the Buddha had finally went to admonish Channa to try to correct his behavior. And it said that during this whole process of this admonishment, Channa would kept quiet. He wouldn't really say anything, and he would go into this time of silence. He wouldn't say anything to any other monks. But then after some time, he would gain the courage again to start abusing other monks and try to assert his authority over all of them. So then the Buddha would come back a second and a third time to try to correct Channa's behavior, but every time it was just, he would stay quiet, and then he'd start acting up again. To where on this third time that the Buddha had admonished Channa, he had finally said, "These two noble monks, Shariputra and Mahamagdalena, these are good friends to you, and you should be good friends with them as well. You should be associating with them because they too can help you progress along your spiritual path, and you could learn quite a bit from them." To where that's finally when the Buddha had spoken the verse that I had said, to associate with good friends and not to associate with unwholesome friends. To where finally I'll say that verse one last time. "Associate not with evil friends, associate not with mean men. Associate with good friends, associate with noble men." And as Channa had heard this verse, he just did the same thing. He kept quiet, and then after a few days, he would just go along his own arrogant business and start abusing the monks like he had in the past. So where the Buddha had saw this behavior and he had recognized that admonishing him wasn't going to be enough, that during this lifetime, Channa would not make those changes that he needed to progress along his spiritual path. And the Buddha had told his attendant Ananda that during my lifetime, the Buddha's lifetime, Channa would not make these changes. It would only be after I have passed away that Channa will see how to correct his behavior. So then, after many years, we finally get to the evening of the Buddha's parinirvana, to where Ananda had then asked the Buddha, said, I remember a long time ago you told me about Channa and what we would do to him after you pass away. What is it that you want us to do with Channa after you leave us? To where the Buddha finally had told Ananda and the other monks, I would like you to impose the Brahma Danda onto him. So Brahma Danda translates to divine punishment, where Brahma means divine, Danda means punishment. And what this means is that the Buddha had told them not to associate with Channa anymore. So whether they had talks, whether they would go out on alms rounds, they said, don't invite Channa to these anymore, don't associate with him anymore, leave him in his seclusion. And they did exactly that. After the Buddha had passed away, none of the monks at that monastery had associated with Channa. And this really struck a chord in Channa. He felt this great isolation to where no one was associating with him, and he was just filled with all this anxiety and all this panic. And eventually this anxiety and panic would lead him to have these fainting fits, to where I assume he would be starting to have panic attacks, and in that panic he would just faint away. He'd wake up, and then people would still not be associating with him. He'd be in the state of isolation, panic again, and faint away. Where after the third time he had fainted, he had saw that this is not the way that I should be behaving. I see that I've been around all these great people my whole time at the monastery, and it was really wrong on my part to berate them. It was wrong on my part to abuse them like I had done. To where a lot of these monks were really just trying to help me, and I wasn't doing my part to help them as well. To where he had saw the error of his ways, and he repented towards the Sangha, the monastic community. And he made efforts then to befriend a lot of the monks there. He made attempts to even befriend Shariputra and Mahagalyana. And in this befriending, he had saw the way to advance his spiritual practice. He started getting into his meditation more seriously, and he started taking his monastic duties more seriously. Whereas he progressed, he finally became an arhat himself. He became an enlightened being like Shariputra and Mahagalyana. So that ends the story here. And before I go into my commentary, I had just thought about this, to where I'll go in. There's another sutra that the Buddha talks about, to where he explains what a good friend is. But this is more in the physical sense of like what a person friend is. But I have thought about now what an evil friend is and what a good friend is, to where in a lot of our talks, we've talked about the metaphorical aspects of a lot of these verses. And it just struck me about like what the association with mean and evil men are, to where these can be the evil thoughts or mean thoughts you have towards people. Because as you fill your mind with all this meanness and all this unwholesomeness, you project that out into your environment. Same thing that Channa was doing. He wasn't associating really with mean monks, he was associating with these mean thoughts, and he would project these onto those around him. He wasn't taking the noble thoughts or the good thoughts and helping those around him. So I guess I literally just thought about that, and I see the more metaphorical aspect of what this verse means. But then now, before I totally go into what my commentary on the verse, I'll talk about another sutra that the Buddha had spoken of, called the Sigalovada Sutra, which translates to the Householder Sutra, where in this, the Buddha talks about 4 good and bad friends, or like we've talked about, wholesome and unwholesome friends. To where the good friends that the Buddha talks about are a friend who helps you when you are in need, And this shows the selfless nature of what a friend can do for you, because they're able to see your needs and wants and put those before their own. To where a good friend is also someone ready to give their own life for you. So to where this shows the really drastic selfless nature about how a friend will really do anything for you. They'll put aside their own life, they'll put aside their own time to make sure that you are doing well. To where a good friend is also someone that protects you from evil. And in this sense, it's sort of to steer a friend towards wholesome actions. It's to admonish them to say, hey, maybe you should think twice about before doing these bad or unwholesome acts. Think about what you're doing in these situations. How does it benefit you? How does it benefit others? And are these actions that you really should be doing? Or finally, a good friend is someone who is happy when you make progress, and they praise those who also speak well of you. Because a good friend really just wants you to succeed. They're not interested in, well, I should say that I've seen some people that get jealous of their friends. They go, oh, they have all these good things and I don't have them, to where there's sort of like an ill will towards them, to where a good friend doesn't get jealous of the good things that you do. They don't get jealous of the progress that you make. They're just happy that you're able to make that progress. And that happiness in turn makes them feel better as well. To where the 4 types of bad friends talked about in the sutra are a friend who is keen to profit from you. To where this is more a friend that takes and takes and takes. It's not really a friend that gives. It's to where they see the friendship as more as a transaction than it is a true friendship. It's always like, what can I get out of this person? What are they to me? What material things can I gain from them, whether it be in status or be in money or possessions? By profit, it's like, what can you get out of this person? And in this case, another bad friend is also one that only helps in words. And by helping in words, it's really, they don't act in actions. They say one thing, but then they go and do another. They say that they'll be there, but they don't really show up for you in your times of need. To where a good friend would show their goodness and wholesomeness in actions. They wouldn't just talk about it. They would actually go out and do those things. The third bad friend the Buddha talks about is a friend who approves of both the good you do and also the bad you do. Because like he talked about in the previous list, a good friend protects you from evil. A bad friend will praise you in evil, and they won't suggest better things for you to do. They will say, oh, you did those good things? All right. You did those bad things? That's okay too. So where a good friend would try to steer you away from these unwholesome behaviors. And finally, a bad friend is one who leads you to unwholesome acts. It's where that stems off from the previous one. If they're not advising you to stay away from unwholesome things, they're more likely to engage you in wholesome things. So then now I'll go into my commentary on what all this sort of comes down to. Because now this verse is very self-explanatory. It really just says, meet good people, stay away from bad people, to where this is kind of common sense, to where you want to try to live the best life that you can. You want to accrue the best people and surround yourself with those people. And we could just leave it at that, but you could dig a little deeper in why this necessarily makes sense. Why should you be wary of who you associate with and what that actually means? Because as you look deeper into it, who you associate with really develops the environment around you. As you start to associate with wholesome people, those will lead you to wholesome actions, they'll lead you to wholesome environments, and eventually lead you to a more wholesome life. To where these people that you associate with, they help develop your character in a wholesome way. To where if you're always associating with unwholesome people, or fools if you want to call them that, they'll lead you to unwholesome environments, to where you'll start to act like them. And that's kind of where this leads to, is this, I think it goes a little primal, to where really there's an innate desire to associate with people. As humans, we're social beings. We see that we need to be in groups to progress along our path, whether it be wholesome or unwholesome. We want some sort of sense of community. We want to feel a sort of connection between people. We want a validation from others. And then now you can get the validation from wholesome people. You can also get that from unwholesome people. And really, who you associate with, that will then create that environment. And this is kind of why the punishment that the Buddha gives Channa is so powerful, because it really attacks his own primal urge for connection with people. As no one's associated with Channa, he becomes isolated. And then that isolation, it attacks his need for connection with people, to where this isolation will then lead to the anxiety, it leads to the panic that he had felt. To where we can feel that even today. As we become isolated with people, we start to lose our connection, and this leads to this sense of isolation, to where what we really feel as humans is connection with others. And that's why it's important to go seek out friends. And we want to connect with others. That's in our innate nature, to be social, to be part of a group. And as we build that connection with people, that's where we forge these friendships. And that's why it's important to realize who you're associating with and who you are becoming friends with. Because as you associate more and more with these people, that connection with them becomes deeper and deeper. So the longer you associate with unwholesome or wholesome people, that connection just becomes larger. So either you get deeper into wholesome environments and thus wholesome actions, or you get deeper into unwholesome environments and unwholesome actions. So at this point, it might be wise to ask, what exactly is a friend to you? And then how should you feel about your friends? And to where you may think about, are you feeling satisfied when you're with these people? Or are you feeling a sense of dread when you go and see them, and a sense of dread after you associate with them? And then are you easily able to flow into conversations with them, or must you watch every step you take? You must watch every word that you speak because you don't want to offend the other person. So where friends in your life really should enrich the life that you're living. They shouldn't be a detriment to it. To where it may be helpful to ask, is the wholesomeness or unwholesomeness in your relationships, how does that weigh? When you look at your friends and you look at the people you associate with, is there more wholesome qualities or is there more unwholesome qualities? And how do those really weigh out? To where having wholesome friends or having good friends, these shouldn't be taxing on your physical or mental states. These should be enriching them. And yes, in every relationship, there are ups and downs in them, but that's just kind of how relationships are. As the way that I see the 4 different types of friends that the Buddha talks about, a good friend gives and takes, to where a bad friend just takes and takes and takes, and it's constantly you giving and it's constantly them taking. So where friendship is more of a two-way street, you must both work to have a good friendship. But then this also works in platonic relationships or romantic relationships. It must be that you give, you also take, the other person gives, they also take. And then now, if it's always you giving and it's always them taking, there may be something missing in that relationship. To where if these truly are the good friends and wholesome friends that you think they are, they'll be willing to listen to the advice that you give them. They'll be willing to listen to the feelings that you tell them, that you talk to them about. So where a good friend will listen to these concerns and they won't get upset, they'll see the error of their own ways and they'll see how to improve upon that to make every party in this relationship wholesome, to make it better. To where a bad friend they may get offended by it. They say, oh, all these things are your fault. I'm doing what I can. And they won't see the error in their ways, because friendship goes 2 ways. It's a constant work between the 2 people. And now maybe you see that a lot of the friends that you have are unwholesome. And it may it may lead you to question why you stick around. And this kind of goes back to that isolated nature, to where no one really wants to be isolated. We always want to be around and connected with someone. And then now it may question you to, why do you stay in unwholesome relationships? Is it because this is all that you have and you fear that loneliness? To where you think it's better to have someone that's not great than to have no one at all. Because that fear of loneliness typically does that to us, is that we see that someone's there and we'll take that over having nothing at all. But then the sense of loneliness doesn't stay forever. And that's the beauty of impermanence, to where even feelings are impermanent like that. So as you let go of these unwholesome people, these unwholesome environments, you may feel that sense of loneliness because the people that you've known in your life are gone. And you may feel that sense of loneliness, but that doesn't stick around forever. To where it's similar to, you have this field and you have all these weeds in it. And as you pull out the weeds, there's nothing in the field, but then now that gives you the opportunity to go out and meet new people. This gives you the opportunity to start planting wholesome flowers, wholesome plants in this field of your friend group. And like I said, that loneliness doesn't last forever, because there's loads of wholesome people. There's loads of good people to associate with. And as you start to associate with these more wholesome friends, this will enrich your own life, because good friends shouldn't be a detriment to your mental being. They shouldn't be a detriment to your life in general. Friends should be something that enriches your life. It's something that gives you purpose. And I guess that's the importance of this verse. Associate not with those that are evil, and associate those that are noble. This will in turn make your own life noble, or in turn make your life unwholesome. So this will be it for my commentary. If there are any questions, or if you have any comments on friends or friendships or relationships, I'd be happy to hear them. And I'll take any questions if you have any. Yes.
What sutra is the type of friendship found in?
It's called the Sigalovada Sutra. That translates to the Householder Sutra. And it's like I said, it goes over to the 4 different types of friends that are good and 4 different types that are bad.
The Householder Sutra?
The Householder Sutra, yes. Yes.
What if our family is unwholesome?
Yeah, that's kind of tricky. And I could go from my own personal experience in my life and from some people that I know. And that's a hard question, because these are people that you've associated with your whole life, to where I've met 2 different types of people that think your family's your family and you must always associate with them. And I've also met some people that they don't think that. They see that their parents are unwholesome, or their brothers and sisters are unwholesome, and it doesn't benefit anyone in their life. To where I have a friend to where he's completely cut out his mother because he doesn't want his own kids to be associating with him. He sees his mom as a detriment to his kids. And that doesn't come out of a place of harm. It comes out of a place of compassion for his own kids. He's like, I want you to live the best life that you can. I see that your grandmother, she won't really provide that. But that's kind of it's a hard dichotomy, and I've dealt with it myself, to where there's some people in my family to where I choose not to associate with them because they don't provide any benefit. And I don't mean that from a materialistic perspective, but it's also in the sense of mental well-being, to where to be around them is harmful to me, but it also goes to fuel their own harmful actions, because in my experience, it kind of gives them a platform to stand on, because I'm willing to listen, and I don't know, it feels like it digs deeper into their own selfish qualities, to where it's something I don't like to talk about because it's circumstantial. Sometimes it's really bad, sometimes it's not so bad. there's only so much you can put up with before it becomes a real detriment to your own life and to their life. So I guess it's more circumstantial. Some people are willing to totally cut out family members. Some people are willing to work with their family members. And it kind of goes to what we talked about. You can't make anyone do anything. You can suggest that I prefer if you treat me this way. I prefer that you do these things, but sometimes they don't do that. Yes, sir.
I just wanted to ask the Murti, the deity, Archanam in Sanskrit, offer the incense, offer the water. We were here before.
Yeah.
Took care of us. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Can you give us a rundown of the symbolism of the deities in this room?
Yes. So a lot of the deities they're more metaphors for specific qualities that embody a bodhisattva. So like one in particular is Avalokiteshvara. She's also over here. It's where Avalokiteshvara literally translates to the one that hears the world's cries. To where they're also called the Bodhisattva of Great Compassion. And by compassion, it's to be in the suffering with others. It's the need to help out other people. It's to hear their problems and see what you can do for those people. To where when you look at Avalokiteshvara, it's not necessarily you worship them. It's to aspire to be more like them. Another one is Mahastama Prapta. This is the Bodhisattva of great action, to where this is the willingness to go out to help others. It's the willingness to see that everyone needs help in life and to give up a bit of yourself for the sake of other people. So a lot of the people in this room, you could see them as physical entities, but a lot of them are just metaphors for good qualities. To where one big one is Manjushri. There's not a statue of him in here, but Manjushri is the Bodhisattva of great wisdom. To where he symbolizes, he looks like a warrior. He looks kind of mean and angry. Well, no, he doesn't look mean and angry. He has this more serene look to him, but does hold a sword. And the sword that he has is supposed to represent the sword that cuts through ignorance. And what that represents is that you're able to look at a situation and figure out what is the best way to approach this, what can your actions do that will result in the most wholesome outcomes. And that's what he represents, is to look at every situation from the point of wisdom, not only for yourself, but for other people around you. So I would say that's where a lot of these statues come from. They're more of manifestations of the qualities of a bodhisattva and a Buddha. You're welcome. Yes, sir.
Just a question. Just wanted to know your perspective on very interesting. You talk about the importance of association and the effect it can have on good or bad.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of reminds me of in the Christian tradition. They have a scripture that says bad association spoils useful habits.
Yeah.
So, and I like what you were saying about, when you cut out all the negative associations, like pulling out weeds. So after a while, it's like your garden is bare. There's like no space. I've gone through that at different points in my life. Kind of was going through that recently. So it's encouraging to know that you were saying that those times don't last when you go through that process.
Mm-hmm.
You just gotta endure it. So my whole thing is, and I'm sure if it gets deeper in the sutra, but how do you endure that loneliness phase when you kind of taking stock of what you're associating with, who you're associating with, and make those adjustments? And then if you're embracing the bodhisattva path, all these deities you just mentioned, it's all about showing compassion, helping people that are not good association.
Yeah.
So, how do you be strict with yourself and avoid the bad associations, but at the same time, be a bodhisattva. You understand what I'm saying? Like, because as a bodhisattva, you gotta have compassion and deal with people that necessarily don't have the most agreeable traits.
That's true too. Well, I guess before I give what I think, does anyone have their own thoughts?
So like when you're going that phase, when you're disassociating from the ego, first you're taking care of yourself. You're not. So first when you're disassociating with the evil people, or evil community, or evil family, whatever it is, that phase is you are taking care of yourself, and you have compassion for you. You're not worrying about, like, you're not at bodhisattva stage at that time, because you are just transitioning into the phase where you are dealing with this impermanence thoughts, like whatever you had, this de-association, bad community or bad unwholesome community, unwholesome friends, and then you are evolving slowly, and then you will reach the bodhisattva state. So at that point, you are just taking care of yourself and neutralizing your thought process, and then you are becoming bodhisattva. You are going towards the path of bodhisattva. You're following the Four Noble Truths, and at that point, you are just evolving.
So self-care first.
Yes.
Allowing yourself time to evolve to that point where you could be more accessible, but
Exactly.
at the same time, like you said, it's balance and circumstantial.
Yes. It's temporary. The impermanence is a huge thing. It's a very temporary period. It will change. You want to be noticed. It will just go on like in few, like a milliseconds. It will feel like it was very temporary, and you will be so serene, so happy, and then you will go towards that path.
I would totally agree with Vinay. It's in that state of loneliness that you're talking about. Like, he's totally right, and I would agree. Like, it doesn't stick around forever, although it may feel like it would. It definitely doesn't. But that also allows you, as you said, you have this field wide open. But then now you can keep it wide open, or you can start to do things to fill that up with wholesome things. But that's kind of now on you, because only you are in control of those actions. Are you going to sit and sulk in the isolation and loneliness, or are you going to conjure up that will to go out and do something?
So either path it takes work.
Yeah, it's not easy, no. Yeah. There's a lot of determination, there's a lot of discipline as well. So like what you said about staying away from, well, I guess, how do you stay away from unwholesome things as you start to go down that path of the bodhisattva? And that's where the discipline comes in, to recognize this won't necessarily lead to the most wholesome outcomes. This probably is not the way that you should be going.
Right?
Yeah.
To catch that thought before you act on it, to be aware of the thought.
That's exactly true. It's like what Leon said. It's a mind game. As you notice these unwholesome things happening, if you're wise enough, you can pick those out and go, oh yeah, this is
not a good thing.
I catch this before it evolves into like a speech or it evolves into action.
So it's not always people. It could be things, what you consume, what you watch.
Yeah, because I think everything develops at a thought level. And like what Leon said, is as soon as you catch those thoughts, you can keep them from evolving into something different.
Because even the things that we touch externally are still thoughts. Because when we encounter them, it creates thought in ourselves.
Yeah, this is the whole practice. So we have Four Noble Truths and we have Eightfold Paths. And once we so that's the discipline we are talking about, Eightfold Paths: right speech, right view, right communication. So those are the things we are keeping all the time in our mind: right speech, right thinking, right view, and yes.
Is there any last minute questions or commentary? Yeah.
Mine says, do not associate with evil companions.
Mm-hmm.
Do not seek fellowship of the vile. Associate with good friends. Seek the fellowship of noble persons.
Mm-hmm.
So I was wondering, like, with the different translations, with
Yes.
the passages, like the meaning would change.
I don't think so, because as I've been doing these talks, I kind of go over different translations of this to where like this one that we talked about today, I've seen like 4 of them, and they all say slightly different things to where but I think the message is still the same. It's like, think about who you're associating with. Is this a wholesome person? Is this an unwholesome person? So I think it's really more of, it's just how you phrase it. They're saying the same thing. It's just how it got translated.
Yeah, means friends is very generic. Friends could be companion, could be a community, could be a family, could be anything, whoever you are associating with. So this generic term they come up like you're saying companion, friends, but it's also thing whether it even applies on your community. We are associating with evil community or evil like tribe or whatever. Then it's not good thing. So we should be associated.
Yeah, I would agree to where, like it says, evil friends, evil men, to where you could say, yeah, evil companions, or you say mean people. It's not directed toward just like a man or a woman. These are kind of just people in general. It's just how the verse got translated. Okay, if there's no last minute questions, then we will invocate the Buddha's name 3 times and go to chanting. Namo Shakya Muni Buddha. Namo Shakya Muni Buddha. Namo Shakya Muni Buddha. For any positive karmic action we have gained, we share that merit with all sentient beings so they will gain full enlightenment. Namo Shakya Muni Buddha. We will begin on page 7. Be speech and mind in perfect oneness. I send my heart along with the sound of the bell. May the hearers awaken from forgetfulness and transcend all anxiety and sorrow. Listen, this wonderful sound brings me back to my true home. Gratitude we offer this incense to all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas throughout space and time. May it be fragrant, earth herself reflecting our careful efforts, our wholehearted mindfulness, and the fruit of understanding slowly ripening. May we and all beings be companions we awaken from forgetfulness and realize our true home. The incense in the censer now is burning all the Dharma realm in every place, auspicious clouds appearing, sincere intention thus fulfilling, as all Buddhas now show their perfect body. Homage to the incense cloud canopy, Bodhisattva and great Bodhisattvas. Homage to the eternally abiding Buddhas, the supreme Dharma and sagely Sangha throughout the Dharma realm and the realm of empty space and 3 periods of time. Homage to the fundamental teacher Shakyamuni Buddha, Shreya honored future Buddha, Manjushri great wisdom Bodhisattva, universal great conduct Bodhisattva, Dharma guarding Deva Bodhisattvas, and the glorious mountain assembly of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Homage to Amitabha Buddha in the land of ultimate bliss, Avalokiteshvara, great compassion Bodhisattva, great strength Bodhisattva, earth store, great vow Bodhisattva, the assembly of great pure sea like Bodhisattvas. O great compassionate Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, Namo great compassionate Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, great compassionate Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Moradna Chayaya Namo Avalokitesvaraya Bodhisattvaya Mahasattvaya Savaravavi Suranadasya Namoskritva Imamaya Balokite Svararamdava Narakindi Irmahavatsvami Savahathato Suram Ajiyam Savasattva Namo Vastava Kamavita Tathaya Om Avaloki Lokate Kate Iri Mahabodhisattvaya Vasava Mala Mala Mahi Mari Hridayom Duru Duru Kamam Duru Duru Vijate Mahavijate Dara Dara Dirini Swaraya Chala Chala Mama Vimala Muktele Shina Shina Asam Prasari Visvam Visvam Prasaya Hulu Hulu Mara Hulu Hulu He Sara Sara Siri Siri Suru Suru Bodhiya Bodhiya Bodhaya Bodhaya Maitreya Narakindi Vishamina Ayamana Swaha Siddhaya Swaha Maha Siddhaya Swaha Siddhayogi Swaraya Swaha Narakindi Swara Mara Nara Swaha Siddha Simha Mukaya Swaha Sava Maha Siddhaya Swaha Chakra Siddhaya Swaha Padma Kastaya Swaha Narakindi Bhagalaya Swaha Maravi Rayaya Swaha Namo Ratnatrayaya Namo Ayavalo Kite Raya Swaha Om Siddhantu Mantrapadaya Swaha Dhammapada is bringing morning light and concentration. My heart is at peace. Half smile is born on my lips. This is a new day and I vow to go through it in mindfulness. Sun of wisdom has risen, shining in every direction. Noble Sangha diligently mind into meditation. Namo Shakyamuni Buddhaya. Namo Shakyamuni Buddhaya. Namo Shakyamuni Buddhaya. Unsurpassed, profound, and wonderful Dharma is difficult to encounter in hundreds of millions of eons. See and hear it, receive and uphold it, and I vow to fathom the Tathagata's true meaning. Shakyamuni Buddha, Namo Shakyamuni Buddha, Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. One who bows and the one who is bowed to are both by nature empty, therefore the communication between them is inexpressibly perfect. Our practice center is the net of Indra, reflecting all Buddhas everywhere. Your person reflects in all Buddhas, to whom with my whole life I go for refuge. Offering light in the 10 directions, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, we bow in gratitude. And living the way of awareness in the very midst of suffering and confusion. Muni Buddha, the awakened one, to whom we bow in gratitude. Sing through ignorance, awakening hearts and our minds, Manjushri, the Bodhisattva of great understanding, to whom we bow in gratitude. King mindfully working joyfully for the sake of all beings, Amantabhadra, the Bodhisattva of great action, to whom we bow in gratitude. To suffering serving beings in countless ways, Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva of great compassion, to whom we bow in gratitude. Awakening and loving kindness in children, sprouts, and all beings, Maitreya, the Buddha, to be born, to whom we bow in gratitude. Moving the way fearlessly and compassionately, the stream of all our ancestral teachers, to whom we bow in gratitude. Is deep and lovely, we now have a chance to see it and practice it. We vow to realize its true meaning. Bodhisattva Avalokita, while moving in the deep course of Prajnapada, shed light on the 5 skandhas and found them equally empty. After this penetration, overcame ill being. Listen, Shadi Putra, form is emptiness, emptiness is form, form is not other than emptiness, emptiness is not other than form. True with feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. Listen, Shadi Putra, all dharmas are marked with emptiness. They are neither produced nor destroyed, defiled nor immaculate, neither increasing nor decreasing. Therefore in emptiness there is neither form nor feelings nor perceptions nor mental formations nor consciousness, ear or nose or tongue or body or mind, no form, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no object of mind, no realms of elements, no interdependent origin, and no extinction of them. No cause of ill being, no end of ill being, and no path, no understanding, no attainment, because there is no attainment. The Bodhisattvas grounded in Prajnapada, find no obstacles for their minds, having no obstacles, come here liberating themselves forever from illusion and realizing perfect nirvana. All Buddhas in the past, present, and future arrive at Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. Should know that perfect understanding is the highest mantra, the unequaled mantra, the destroyer of ill being, the incorruptible truth. The mantra of Prajnapada should therefore be proclaimed. Gate swaha gate gate para samgate bodhi swaha gate para samgate bodhi swaha. We invoke your name, Avalokiteshvara. We aspire to learn your way of listening, to help relieve the suffering in the world. You know how to listen in order to understand. We invoke your name in order to practice with all our attention and open-heartedness. We will sit and listen without any prejudice. We will sit and listen, judging or reacting. We will sit and listen in order to understand. We will sit and listen so attentively we will be able to hear the person is saying and also what is being left unsaid. We know that just by listening deeply we already alleviate a deal of pain and suffering in the other person. Invoke your name, Manjushri. We aspire to learn your way, which is to be still and to look deeply into the hearts of things, the hearts of people. We will look with all our attention and open-heartedness. We will look with unprejudiced eyes. We will look without judging. We will look deeply so that we will be able to see and understand the roots of suffering through the impermanent and selfless nature of all that is. Practice your way of using the sword of understanding to cut through the bonds of suffering, thus freeing ourselves and other species. Your name Samanta Bhadra. We aspire to practice your vow to act with the eyes and hearts of compassion. Joy to one person in the morning to ease the pain of one person in the afternoon. We know that the happiness of others is happiness, and we aspire to practice joy on the path of service. We know that every word, every look, every action, and every smile can bring happiness to others. If we practice wholeheartedly, we ourselves may become an inexhaustible source of peace and joy for our loved ones and for all species. Your name Chitti Garba. We aspire to learn your way of being present where there is darkness, suffering, and despair. Bring light, hope, relief, and liberation to those places. We are determined not to forget about or abandon those in desperate situations. We do our best to establish contact with those who cannot find a way out of their suffering. Cries for help, justice, equality, and human rights are not being heard. We know that hell can be found in many places on earth. We do our best not to contribute to creating more hells on earth and to help transform the hells that already exist. Practice in order to realize the qualities of perseverance and stability so that like the earth we always be supportive and faithful to those in need. Take refuge in the Buddha, the one who shows me the way in this life. I take refuge in the Dharma, the way of understanding and of love. I take refuge in the Sangha, community that lives in harmony and awareness. In the refuge of Buddha, I clearly see the path of light and beauty in the world. In the refuge of Dharma, I learn to open many doors on the path of transformation. Dwelling in the refuge of Sangha, shining light that supports me, keeping my practice free of obstruction. Taking refuge in the Buddha, in myself I aspire to all people recognize their own awakened nature, realizing the mind of love. Refuge in the Dharma, in myself I aspire to help all people fully master the ways of practice. Walk together on the path of liberation, taking refuge in the Sangha. Myself I aspire to help all people build fourfold communities to embrace all beings, support their transformation. Reciting the sutras, practicing the way of awareness gives rise to the bare. Without limits, we vow to share the fruits with all beings. We vow to offer tribute to parents, teachers, friends, and beings who give guidance and support along the path. Real quick, I did want to mention that this Saturday there is a meditation class at 10 p.m. if you would like to join.